Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Just an update video for this weekend's progress. Making pretty good progress on the Beetle build. It's coming along a little slower than we wanted it to, but we're getting there. Now I've got everything just kind of mocked up here right now. There's not a whole lot of this is glued into position. The engine isn't glued in. Actually, the back carburetor, the air cleaners, none of that stuff is glued on. So we just got it kind of sitting in a rough position right now just to kind of give you a rundown of what we've done so far and what we need to do. Uh, I've had a lot of questions on it about, what I've used, whose parts I've used on it, what color it is, just various questions. So I'm going to try to answer a lot of those and just bring everybody else up to date that's been following the build. To start out with, this is a 1/16 scale Revell VW Beetle. It's right around, I think, 1951 or 52 is the model year that the model depicts. And the only thing that I have used out of the Revell kit, for the most part, is the body, the dash, the running boards, a couple interior panels like the headliner piece, and there's a couple other odds and ends in there. The door panels. What else did we use? The armrests, and like I say, just a couple other things. As far as the body, we'll be putting the molding on the side of it, and that will be the chrome trim. We'll be using that out of the kit. But other than that, everything else is, for the most part, 3D printed, scratch built, or aftermarket. As far as the chassis and the cage and all of that stuff, it is totally 100% scratch built. No aftermarket involved in the main frame rails or the chassis. We'll go ahead and spin this around here a little bit, and it does have micro nitro wheels on it that he cut for me a long time ago. This model was started about 4 years ago. So the micro nitro wheels were cut actually for another project, and I ended up using them on this one. I still have to add the center caps back here and also the lugs. You can see the RB Motion lugs are added to the front wheel, and also an RB Motion valve stem. And there's a valve stem up in the, I think it's turned to the upside. Yeah, it's right up in here on the rear. So that's the wheels that I've had a lot of questions about. They are the older Micro Nitro wheels before he actually retired. And the front tires are the kit VW tires. The rear tires are a cast piece of mine, and they have been flattened on the bottom and brought up to basically about a 32-inch tall tire is what it comes out to. And they are slicks. Now we'll go ahead and spin it on around here to the back side. Before we get to that, we'll go ahead and talk about the color. The color is a custom mixed House of Color Candy Apple Red. This one does have the gold base under it, and then the Candy Apple Red from House of Color has a little bit of a twist put in it, another color added to it, and then it is clear coated. This one is actually clear coated with one-shot lacquer, believe it or not, out of the can. Now I still have a little bit more buffing to do on this, just finish up stuff. So the paint is not totally done. It's coming out pretty good. But we'll go ahead and move on to the trunk. Everything that you see in the trunk is scratch built except for the nitrous bottle. That is a 3D printed bottle from Shapeways that I ordered in a long time ago. And Sandy actually made the decal for me. The fuel pumps are scratch built. The fuel cell with the fill, it has the fill top on it, the pop-up cap on it. It has a sending unit in it, the vent hose, and it'll also have a return line going into it. The tubs are all scratch built. As you can see, they have flocking on them along with this rear panel up in here. And pretty much everything in the trunk is flocking except for the polished aluminum surround around the fuel cell. And the wheelie bars are all scratch built except for the actual wheels and the brackets. The brackets are from Dirt Modeler, and the wheels, I think they come from Ted's Modeling. I'm not sure who made those. But as far as the main bars, the axle, all the mounts on the rear end, that's all scratch built. It does have RB motion bolts and nuts on everything. The parachute is a resin piece that has been substantially modified to look a little bit more realistic. And we added the remove before flight pin and tag here, then the parachute cable, and we still have the release cable that's got to come out of this hole right here on the body and comes up to the parachute. Like I say, none of this stuff is glued into place. It's just sitting here, so I don't want to touch it. But it does get a parachute cable come up there. We do have the trunk lid done, which is right here, and it's probably got a little bit of dust on it from sitting up here on the bench. There is the trunk lid, and we also did the flocking on the underside of the trunk lid. So that part is pretty much ready. I got a little bit more buffing to do to it, and it'll be done. We went ahead and scratch built the, spin it around here so we can see it. The charging lugs for the rear of the car, they're all scratch built out of solder and then plastic tubing and a couple pieces of wire. We built those. Was real happy with them. That's a detail I don't see on a lot of cars on the show table, so we did that. This does have a scratch built 9-inch rear end in it with all the brackets, 4-link bars. It has the micro nitro bolts and nuts in the 4-link bars. And you'll notice that this front wheel is a little crooked here. That's because it's just sitting in position, so don't pay any attention to that. We went ahead and scratch built the glass. I was not happy with the kit glass. It is tinted in the back, and it's also tinted around on this side here. It has Tamiya smoke tint on it. This glass here, this quarter window, I just put in probably in a couple hours before we did this video. It has not been tinted yet. That'll be sprayed. So next we'll move on to the interior. Like I say, everything on the interior for the most part is scratch built. The seats were donated by a fellow modeler of mine and good friend, Mr. Rocky Sink. Donated the seats out of a 1/16 scale. I think it was a Camaro or something like that. And I did a lot of modifications on them, poured a mold of them, and then we went ahead and made them fit this car, which they have some notching. They've been narrowed, they've been shortened. A lot of work's been done to them before they went into the mold, and then we cast those up. And I also went in and changed them a little bit. I cut the headrest off like I had it, and I put a twin post headrest in. So that came out pretty good. Was happy with that little detail. And I also added, it's going to be hard to see, but right up in the center of the headrest is a photo etched VW emblem that's been inset into the simulated leather to make it look like a stitched in VW emblem. The racing harnesses are all scratch built, basically ribbon, and I cut all of the buckles and all the mounts and the main catch for all the harnesses, the round piece that everything clips into. You can see that this is not glued in yet, but you can see the floor mount for the strap that goes down between your legs there and mounts to the chassis. That's in. I have a floor mat that goes in here that's sitting back here on the back of the board here. That's the floor mat. And I actually built that before I made this piece here, so I have to go back in and modify it. Transmission tunnels all scratch built, firewall scratch built. Like I say, I did use the kit dash in here. We went ahead and put aftermarket gauge decals behind the factory instrument spots. The tack is a 5-inch monster tack with recall and the shift light. I do not have the shift light mounted right now, but it will be in here, and it's wired. And we also have a flower that goes in the little vase that's on the dash. That's not in yet, but it will be. We scratch built the pedal assemblies in here, the pedal box, the floor and everything is scratch built. All the rear tubs, the panels around the rear tubs is all scratch built. So now we'll move on to the what I call the business end of this thing. And this started out as a 3D printed big block Chevrolet from Shapeways, and it has been substantially modified and cleaned up. Was not real happy with the texture that was involved with the engine. The supercharger is also from Shapeways, and it was a bear to get this thing smoothed out and get it right. But after many hours of work, we finally got it to look pretty decent. So we scratch built an intercooler, which is under the blower, and it is plumbed from the water pump to give it inlet, and which is on the passenger side, and then the outlet comes into the water neck here, which is the purge tank also. Now, I don't know if it'll show up, but the radiator hose is not connected into the RB Motion fitting there. That's because, like I say, all this stuff is just mocked into place. The radiator is all scratch built. The electric fan assembly is about 50% scratch built, and then I used a piece of photo etch, and I forget what the blades were. They're a piece of photo etch. It's all been glued in, and I still have to wire that yet. We got a little bit more work to do on the radiator. Got to put a finish on it, the finish polished aluminum, and then we're going to make a top plate that goes across here for it. We went in and put pulley faces on the blower pulley, the idler pulley, and of course the crank pulley doesn't need one. We scratch built the front drive MSD distributor. We scratch built the MSD coil, which is down here on the front of the motor plate. And I'm not sure if the camera will pick that up, but it's right down in here. All the spark plug wires are run, all the boots on the distributor itself, scratch built water pump in here. All the plumbing and everything is either hardline or stainless. And like on the nitrous lines, we have all that in hardline up here, which is also going to be very hard to see. It's right up in this area here. It is the angled hard lines that come out from the nitrous block back here in the back. And these two lines that you see just kind of hanging loose out here, this is the nitrous and the fuel from the nitrous and fuel solenoids, which are sitting here in the front of the engine. They are all scratch built with the A&N fittings. Right behind those is the double return spring with the linkage that we're still working on. We got a little bit more to go on that. This line that you see coming out here and turned up, that's going to go to the regulator that sits over here on the inner fender well. And just a couple other things that we've done to it. We scratch built the valve cover hold downs, which will be almost impossible to see, I think. They are right back in there. They're red. If you look at the top of the valve cover, you may be able to pick those up. We scratch built those. The interior linkage is all rod ends, and I scratch built the bell crank for it. And all the tubing is stainless tubing from RB Motion, along with his rod ends and bolts. The main pivot bar here, I scratch built the levers and everything for that to go to the carburetors. And we have to run the Morse cable in here yet, the throttle cable out of the firewall. The carburetors are 3D printed, but they are also a whole lot of cleanup and a lot of work to get them right. We hardline those. Parts by Parks air cleaners is what we used on this, and that's actually a big air cleaner for 1/24 scale, and it worked real good to simulate roughly about the 8-inch air cleaners in 1/16 scale. So they come out real good. All A&N fittings and hard lines on the carburetors. Let's see, what else do we have in there? The scratch built MSD, which is the blue BTM box, like I've used on my 1-to-1 cars. A lot of people, I had one guy ask me about that. He said, you know, your MSD is the wrong color. Do a little bit of research, because not all MSDs are red. The BTMs, you can get them in red or you can get them in blue. And also some of the MSD boxes that came directly from GM Performance Parts were blue. So I went with blue on this to give it a little bit of an accent on the red. But like I say, all the firewall panels, all the inner fender panels, you can see this white panel here, we're still building it. We have another one to go over on this side. And of course, scratch built front suspension, the rack and everything will be scratch built in it. So it's a lot of scratch building in this. I think a lot of people out there are under the impression that this is all aftermarket. It is not. The majority of this build is scratch built, and there is, you know, a fair amount of aftermarket stuff on it, but I wanted to try to have a balance of aftermarket and scratch built, and I think I've done pretty well with just a very little bit of kit added into it. So, and like for the front engine plate and all that stuff, the mid plate, all that's scratch built. The transmission is a resin Turbo 400 that's been modified. So, hopefully, that gives you an idea of everything so far that we've done to the car. And that's just a overall description of it. That is definitely not everything that's been done to it, but it's getting there. It's getting a lot closer. Hopefully, we'll have this done in the next couple of weeks and debut it at a show up in Pittsburgh. That's the plan. So we'll see what happens. So I just wanted to do an update for everybody and answer some questions that's come up on the little Beetle build. And if you have any more questions or whatever, leave me a comment on the video. I'll be more than glad to help you out. And we should have some more videos coming up as far as updates on it here this coming week. So stay tuned for them. And as always, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.